It's a general misconception that if only a few seconds of a song or a stock footage clip or anything is used, that it's okay to use. That's just not accurate. What I hear a lot from people is, well, if I only use 10 seconds of this thing, is it okay? And my answer generally, well, always is no. There's no 10-second rule. It's not like a sandwich fell on the floor, that kind of thing. So if there's any amount of time that's being used from an existing song or anything, you have to get permission. The concept of fair dealing in Canada and fair use in the United States, and different countries have different sorts of regimes within their copyright law. There's a process whereby there's some things that you can use, arguably, that it is copyright infringement, but because of the fair dealing rules, you're allowed to do it. Within music, parody is one of the items for which you may rely or try to rely on fair dealing. The thing about fair dealing in Canada and fair use in the United States is that, sure, it's part of the Copyright Act, it's an exemption to copyright infringement, but really the only way that it can be determined definitively that it's fair dealing in Canada is if a judge says that it is. And it's just not practical or financially feasible in most situations to go through the court system to have a judge confirm that something is fair dealing. And so when people say to me, well, is this fair dealing or fair use? I mean, it always depends on the situation, but preferably you're not having to rely on fair dealing and fair use, because you don't want to have to deal with a claim and have to try to defend it and go to court and make the claim that it's fair dealing use here in Canada. So it's great. The fair dealing and fair use are key aspects of the copyright regime in general in the world to balance the rights of a user and of creator. But it's not the first thing that you should rely on when putting music into your film. You should be getting permission. So whether it's a few seconds of something or whether you want to rely on fair dealing or fair use, those aren't practical ways to lead to music being in your production. Permission from the creators, whoever controls the rights, that's the best way to have music in your production from an insurance perspective and generally. So whether music's in the background or whether it's at the forefront or whether it's the theme song of a TV show or in the credits, it does not change the fact that you need permission. You're probably going to pay more money if the song's in the credits or if it's a theme song versus in the background. But it doesn't matter if it's 1 second or 1,000 seconds, doesn't matter if it's in the background or at the forefront, you need permission. The concept of public domain is that after a certain amount of time after an author's death, the music goes into the public domain, and meaning that people in the public can use it without permission. So if I write a song today, if a producer wants to use it, they need permission from me because I own the rights. But if I had died, let's say 100 years ago, you don't need permission. Now the question is, when does music go in the public domain? Currently in Canada, it's actually 70 years after January 1st, in the year after the author has died. So I work a lot in the area of kids animation productions, and in those situations you have people who are composing music that may be based on music that's in the public domain. And part of the role of myself and the producer is to establish whether or not the music for which someone's basing their new song on is in the public domain or not. And if a composition is in the public domain, then if you're creating a new version of that song, you don't need permission from anybody. If a song may or may not be in the public domain yet, you want to, do some research, do some due diligence on whether it's in the public domain. And if it's not, then you need to get permission from whoever still controls that composition. The other kind of really important element here is that there's a lot of music in the public domain. There's a lot of people who've made arrangements and adaptations of music that's in the public domain. And if you as a producer want to use a composition that is an arrangement, someone else's arrangement of something in the public domain, you need permission from whoever arranged that public domain work. So if anybody has created work that's not in the public domain, you do need permission. If your composer wants to create a piece of score that's based on a public domain work, allegedly, then it's important to clarify whether it's in the public domain. And there are different rules about public domain in different parts of the world. Canada and the US have a similar structure now, Canada having come kind of more in line with the 70-year rule more recently. One other point I'd make is that a lot of holiday songs, a lot of Christmas songs are in the public domain, and that's kind of where public domain comes up a lot in productions to know whether a certain holiday jingle is in the public domain or not. So again, public domain is a very kind of important part of the music ecosystem with film productions. And it's important to clarify that if someone says that they're making some score or a song based on a public domain piece, that you want to make sure that in both Canada and the US and beyond, that it is actually in the public domain.